You guys good? Good. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to the Smithfield Town Council meeting, Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023. There were no votes taken in executive session. Moving on to our prayer. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. Amen. Salute to the flag, please. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Emergency notification, emergency evacuation and health notification.
Thank you, Council President. There's two main exits from the Town Council chambers to the left of the stage. Up the stairs will take you out the back of the building. Out the back of the Council chambers to your right, the stairs will take you out the front of the building. Just past that on the right is the men's facility. Up the stairs to the left is the ladies' facility. Please do not use the elevator in time of emergency.
Thank you, sir. Now moving on to minutes. Move that the minutes of the September 19th, 2023 executive session meeting held pursuant to Rhode Island General Law, Section 42-465A1, personnel, to interview Michael Romano for possible reappointment to a town board or commission. In Rhode Island General Law, Section 42-46-5A2, potential litigation be approved as recorded and sealed.
Motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Abstain.
Oh, wait a minute. Do I have to abstain from that because I abstained from part of that meeting?
Abstain from the section of minutes.
Okay. All right.
You good? No. Item B, move that the minutes of September 19th, 2023 open session meeting be approved as recorded.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain. Item 7, consider, discuss, and act upon the following possible appointments and reappointments. The first one is the Economic Development Commission reappointment with a term expiring in March of 2026.
Mr. President, I move that the Smithfield Town Council reappoint Patricia Mayorisi to the Economic Development Commission with a term expiring in March of 2026.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Question. Ms. Mayorisi's, is she going from a full-time seat to a full-time, is she going from a, I'm sorry, from an alternate to a full-time? Okay, so it's not a, are we reappointing her to a?
We are
Technically, we are still reappointing her to the board, but we're moving her from the alternate seat to the full seat.
Okay, thank you.
Second on the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item B, Land Trust reappointment with a term expiring in September of 2028.
We're recused.
Recuse.
Motion to approve the reappointment of Michael Romano to the Land Trust with a term expiring September 2028.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mike went to the bathroom.
All right, moving on to public hearing. Conduct a public hearing to consider, discuss, and act upon zoning ordinance amendments to section 5.11.5, principal solar energy systems, and section 5.11.6, general requirements for accessory and principal solar energy systems. This is sponsored by council members Rachel Toppy and Michael Ionati.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Smithfield Planning Board approved changes to the solar ordinance to reduce the maximum amount of forested areas that can be clear-cut for the installation of solar systems from 40% to 25%. Also, shade pruning rather than clear-cutting should be utilized.
I need to declare the public hearing open.
Okay.
Sorry. I declare the public hearing open. No, it's no problem. If anyone from the public would like to get up and speak on this, they can. Or we can have Mike explain a little bit more. Thank you.
Well, I'll just explain a little more, and then if someone wants to speak, they can go right ahead. Shade pruning rather than clear cutting would be utilized wherever feasible. And so this would extend really a protection for our forests to commercial and industrial areas. Because as you know, ground solar over 1,750 feet is now prohibited in our residential areas. Also, under these changes, a solar energy applicant would be required to assess the impacts of forest loss and how the impacts can be mitigated. At a minimum, the issues that would have to be addressed by an applicant would be water quality, wildlife habitats, carbon sequestration, energy storage, and the effects on adjacent properties. The planning board also voted to increase the buffer between ground-mounted solar systems on commercial or industrial properties and residential zones from 50 feet to 300 feet, and from public or private roads from 100 feet to 150 feet. Landscaping will now all have to be designed to visually screen the solar panels from roads and adjoining properties. We've introduced these amendments because we feel it is important for us to make every effort to preserve the character of our town. It makes no sense to clear-cut trees for solar farms when trees remove carbon from the atmosphere and provide us with the semi-rural feeling that we all value in Smithfield. Increasing the buffers between commercial and residential properties will protect residents from any of the negative effects of having an energy facility near their property. Well, for many of the negative effects, maybe not all. The increased road buffers and landscaping are an attempt to soften negative aesthetics caused by a solar facility.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this?
I want to just thank Vice President Ionati for his work on this. I am 1,000% on board. I think the amendments are excellent. I love this. Just want to say, this really does a lot for, you know, preserving the natural as much as we can at least, so.
Thank you. I declare this public hearing closed. Pleasure of the council.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Just want to thank you both for introducing this. Appreciate it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to licenses. Consider, discuss, and act upon approving a one-day beer wine license for the Smithfield Senior Center as follows. A Halloween party to be held October 31st and a Christmas party to be held December 5th, both in 2023. The parties will take place at Smithfield Senior Center, 1 William J. Hawkins Jr. Trail from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. as listed as applied, subject to all state regulations and local ordinances.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Item B, consider, discuss, and act upon approving a new mobile food truck license for Kelcar Q LLC DBA Team Gotta Q, 1800 Mendon Road, Suite 163, Cumberland, Rhode Island, with a Rhode Island Reg number 526-5785, as applied, subject to compliance with all state regulations and local ordinances.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Item C, consider, discuss, and act upon approving a new holiday sales license for Metro Mattress Corporation, DBA Metro Mattress, 473 Putnam Pike, Suite B3, as applied, subject to compliance with all state regulations and local ordinances.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Item D, consider, discuss, and act upon approving one-day special event license for the Smithfield Parks and Recs Department for a food truck and Smithfield Police Department night out event. This is for Friday, October 20th, 2023, from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. All special event license for the Smithfield Parks and Recreation Department are subject to compliance with all state regulations and local ordinances.
Move
So moved.
passage.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Old business. Sean, you're here for this.
I am.
Consider, discuss, and act upon amendments to Chapter 305 of the Code of Ordinances entitled Stonewall Protection and Preservation to amend Sections 305-3 and 305-4 and adopt Section 305-7. This is sponsored by Councilmember Sean Kilduff.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I'd like to thank Council Vice President Ionati and the chairperson of the Historical Preservation Commission, Robert Leach, for being instrumental in putting this piece of this ordinance together. If at the appropriate time, I do offer one quick amendment to add to this that's been discussed with the chairperson and also with Kevin Cleary. Under 35-4, we would like to reference back to chapters 1 through 9 and add the language, upon 5 days receipt of said notice from the building official, temporary collective measures shall be taken by the notified party. Upon 30 days receipt of said notice from the building official, permanent corrective measures shall be taken by the party to comply with the form of notice. I'll submit that to the clerk in writing as well.
Councilman Kilduff, where is that in here?
It's what I'd like to add.
Oh, okay.
305-4.
Oh, all right, thank you.
It's just language to add, basically to notify people of the appropriate remedies.
Okay.
Is the $500 fine still in there?
Yes, it is. That was the
The
original.
$500 fine was in the original ordinance, which passed in 2006.
Has it ever been instituted? Does anybody know?
I don't think it's ever been enforced.
No, I don't think we've actually needed to get to the point of enforcing the $500 fine. Once they're made aware of their violations, so far everyone's worked with the town to rectify that.
The ordinance as it stood as well in 2007 didn't give any teeth to the penalty of enforcement on the $500. It just said this was the fine. It didn't really assign a party to implement that or monitor it.
Well, let me ask you this question. Does anybody have any objection of reducing that to $100 and then having the municipal court judge can fine up to $500?
Well, the reason that we met, myself, Councilman Kildorf, and Chairman Leach met, was because this ordinance was being totally ignored. Historic stone walls were just being knocked over with reckless abandon in several areas of the town. And so I think that to reduce the fine would send the wrong message to developers that, they get rewarded if they don't follow the ordinance. I think the ordinance was originally, the $500 fine was designed to compel compliance, because once a stone wall is knocked down, it's very difficult to get it back the way it was. Also, we are also adding into this the requirement that when an application for a development is submitted, or for a building permit for a new structure, they have to be provided with a copy of the ordinance, and they have to execute an affidavit which says that they have read the ordinance and they understand the ordinance before they can get any building permit. So this puts them on notice, and there is no excuse, in my opinion, after being put on notice this way, for violating this ordinance. Our stone walls are part of our heritage. They're very important. It's very much a part of the atmosphere and the character of our town.
So your answer is no,
That's the short answer.
after all that? No, I just thought that if we reduce the fine and they have to go in front of a municipal court judge, they have to take time out of work, it's a hell of a lot more money than $500.
Well, I'd rather have them have to go before the judge for them to try to get it reduced, put the burden on them rather than
Well,
on
I
us.
had asked if we could put the municipal court judge in there. I don't know if it's in there.
Well,
or
these
not.
automatically are enforced by the municipal court based on, our general municipal court ordinance, which says that all violations are within the jurisdiction of the municipal court.
Yeah, and this, what we're amending is a municipal code, so it is under enforcement of the municipal judge.
I have a question. It says they have to repair or restore. Most of these walls are in rough shape. So how are they repairing them to like they were back in the day, perfectly, or?
Well, they don't have to do anything to them if
Mhm.
they don't want to.
They don't touch them?
If they touch them, then they have to fix them
Okay.
and put them back to the satisfaction of the Historic Preservation Commission.
Thank you.
Councilman Kilduff, can you clarify that amendment? Because my concern is that we've gone back and forth on amendments with recommendation from Mr. Clary, and we incorporated in this version. I just want to make sure that we're going with the final, so to say.
Yeah, to me, the amendment is just reiterating what we've already set in stone about the 30 days receipt. So I think it's just circling back as a reminder. If we're having people read this and become aware of it prior,
Why do you need it?
Well, I just want to make sure, because you were asking to amend it, and I just want to make sure I'm putting forward the right one for the council president to sign after. And I feel like that was, depending on the date of that, we might have incorporated in the red and green Christmas version that we have in the packet.
No, it wasn't proposed.
There was an addition after that.
It was initiated after.
Can we do it subject to Anthony reviewing? Yes.
Hi, Mr. President, could I make a comment on this particular piece?
Leave your name and address, please.
Thank you very much. The issue that Ms. Kilduff is mentioning is memorialized in the code. What we were saying is remind people where it is in the code. It's a 5 and 30 day period. We're trying to clarify because when somebody comes to sign their affidavit, this is only the amendment. It's the standalone code that the building official will give the person to read. So what we thought is remind them that most germane piece is, how does the penalty period begin, if there is a penalty? And I actually was illuminated on this by Kevin Cleary. So Kevin, if you wouldn't mind explaining that 5 and 30, it's in the code. Otherwise, you could ask Mr. Cleary to further illuminate on it. And the reason why we kept the $500 is because $100 to a developer is a yawn. Believe me, if you see some of the fines that other state jurisdictions fine these guys, it's in the tens of thousands of dollars. I know one within a rock throw that was $80,000 to remediate and had to be paid. So $500 and for each offense is minuscule to try to stop the problem that we have. So that was the background of how that occurred. So I'm available for questions. I'll be sitting right over there.
Kevin Clary, Smithfield Town Engineer. I believe the building official had spoken on the matter and had asked that the language be revised as he had requested it to be, since he was the overseeing staff member that's responsible for enforcement of that ordinance. So my initial assessment with the temporary and permanent language corrective after 5 days and 30 days was merely a suggestion, as discussed with the chairman of the Historical Preservation Commission as an offertory proposition, but that it was advised that the building official have the collective say on whether that be a valid assumption or a valid revision amendment into the ordinance. So that's about all I can speak to that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council President.
So the change is essentially to protect, not to, to give another layer of, okay, you should have known to the potential violator. Is that what I'm understanding?
It's that language, I've used it in other ordinance prescriptions through soil erosion control and some of the other ordinances that my role is responsible for enforcement of. And it's to get people to act in a corrective manner in the short term, and then come up with a long-term solution. It's more of to get their acknowledgement in the 5-day period, and all right, I wasn't aware that it was an issue, or I was, and then all right, what's the long-term plan to make a correction on that? So that's merely the intent of that language. I didn't give it an exhaustive look in the entire charter, but I did look throughout a number of codes to see if that was consistent language throughout. And the 5-day appears in some instances, but not with the 30-day. And then the 30-day appears in a number of ordinances in its prescriptive enforcement, but there aren't many situations where they both appear collectively together.
So more transparency, essentially, right?
It's a call for an action.
Yeah, uniformity, yeah, okay. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Council.
I'll ask this to the solicitor, how much discretion does the building official have in enforcing this ordinance the way it's written now?
I mean, it's his function. He's making the ultimate decision. He's making the ultimate decision as to whether or not there's a violation notice. whether or not a violation notice has to be issued comes from the building official. The Historic Preservation Chair makes an advisory recommendation to him and fulfills his function under the ordinance.
Yes. Good evening, Gary Tacoyan, 6 Elmhurst Drive, Greenville. Before I start, what I like to say is, there's nothing better than looking at a nice stone wall. Does this ordinance pertain to commercial and industrial property also? It does. So I have, as you know, the state is selling a 50-foot strip of land on George Washington Highway. I own 2 pieces of property that abut the state's land. I've already purchased one strip, that 50 feet. So I called Randy recently because I have a sale and purchase agreement pending with another piece. So I called Randy, and I called Mike Phillips, and I met with Robert Leach. So the stone wall on George Washington Highway right now is on state land. I want to buy that 50-foot strip. But if I buy the 50-foot strip, now the stone wall will be on my land, and I'll inherit this stone wall that I can't take down. So in one way, I say to myself, why would I, if I can't move the stone wall, which is now, in my estimation, in the way of that 50-foot buffer, why would I buy this land? Why? And if I buy the land, the state is gonna, this town is gonna incur tax revenue because now I'm gonna be paying taxes on that. It's roughly a half an acre on that piece of property. So the town will lose revenue if I don't buy it. And it'll just stay the way it is because I won't be able to use it.
So let me just get this straight. So even before this ordinance was amended right now, there was still a fine in place and rules of not knocking down historical walls. Were you buying this property with the idea of knocking down a historical wall?
I was buying this property with the, I just read this in, what's that?
With the idea of.
Hang on, let me finish. Hang on. I just read this the other day in the Observer. So I was going to remove that wall. Yes. I was going to remove the wall. Actually, what went through my mind was 2 things. One, remove the wall and rebuild it on another area on the property, or donate the wall to the town so they could use the historic, if they're historic rocks. So donate the stones to the town and let them use those stones in a recreation area for a stone wall.
They're still knocking down a stone wall.
Correct.
They don't want that.
That's fine.
Prior to this ordinance being.
I understand you don't want it.
Walls being-
I understand. I could see that what's going on, that you don't want it. But what I'm saying is, so this stone wall now that's going to be in the way, you won't even entertain the thought of relocating it on my property line after I buy it from the state. It's going to stay exactly where it is.
The concept of this is you bought a piece of property.
I didn't buy it yet.
With the wall, but you know a wall is there.
That's right.
You want to buy it with the intent of destroying a historical structure.
No, what do you mean by destroying? Destroying is sending it to a rock crusher.
Picking it up, donating it to the town.
Correct.
Moving it, that is destroying it. So
Okay, yeah, so if that's your interpretation,
That is my
destroying it to me is sending it to the crusher. So if you had a historic house and you jacked it up and moved it to another location, you didn't destroy the house, you just moved it to a new
destroy
location.
the historical character of the house.
Okay,
Yes. Okay.
so is that it? This wall stays there and there's no moving this wall or rebuilding this wall on my property, maybe on the property line now?
I think what Gary is saying, obviously, because he's purchasing an adjacent piece of property, now the wall is wherever it is. I don't know where it sits on your property, but it's not on the property line anymore.
Right now, it's on the property line of the state and mine.
Right.
So if I buy the 50 feet,
It's in the middle.
it's in the middle.
I mean, the ordinance would require you to submit a plan to the building official with input from the historic preservation chair and to talk about any possible relocation or rebuilding or
He just said, though, I can't do it because I'm destroying it.
the ordinance basically allows you to submit a plan
Yeah.
for the alteration, relocation, or demolition of a stone wall. It's not that it's totally prohibited. You have to submit a plan to the building official
Yeah.
with input from the historic preservation chair, and ultimately, they'll
So,
render a decision.
so I can take the wall all out and relocate it.
Single-handedly, you need to consider.
I'm not saying it, but there's a possibility that I could move that wall.
Yes, but you'd have to submit a plan through the historic preservation, through actually the building official, with input for the historic preservation chair as to the historic nature of the wall to see whether or not it's feasible. But there is the opportunity to do that under the ordinance.
So ultimately, Gary, you're rolling the dice.
I know that.
You're rolling the dice.
I know that. And right now, I'm gonna roll the dice and I get it. Now I know what I'm gonna do now, but
The town's gonna lose money, and you're gonna roll the dice.
yes,
Tax revenue.
of course. You know, I'll tell you what I would do. I'd take the rocks and build a nice wall at Deerfield Park with them. But that's,
Thank you.
Just to clarify, because I've been to the site, I don't think that there's anybody sitting in front of me that would permit for any dollar amount a stone wall to be moved sheerly for tax incentive purposes. So I wouldn't even smile and entertain that would be the case. So the issue before you is a property that is not purchased, is not owned by the person that just spoke. In addition to that, there's no plan for a use. So it's very premature to even talk about what you would do to destroy a very intact, one of our better stone walls in our community, which had I known this was going to occur, I could provide you with many photographs. The wall is that tall. It's really an impeccable wall. So without a plan, my understanding of what there was no plan or use, and clearly in the ordinance and in the book that follows the ordinance by name, mining of stone walls is considered not a moral objective of a town. This is in the book. So if you were to look at it that way, you could say, well, first of all, we dismiss the fact that you would move it for some incentive, financial, or to embellish the property in the town, because all that is excluded by reference specifically in the code. And if you want to see more photographs of that site, I'm more than happy to show those. So I'm disappointed that it's coming up. Otherwise, I would have had before you photographs, maps, charts, aerial, historical imagery for you to be able to comment upon. But I think it's hypothetical on 3 or 4 different levels, so I would dismiss it as part of this hearing, but I'm only speaking as a suggestion commission, if you will. So thank you for hearing me.
Mr. Leach is 100% correct. I don't have any plans or anything, I don't own it. So he's right. I don't have any plans with this property because I don't own it yet. And I don't know what the future's gonna bring, but now I know what the future's gonna bring. The wall stays. And that's fine. If the wall stays, the wall stays. It's just, I won't buy it, that's all.
Thank you. Pleasure of the council.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any more discussion from the council? All those in favor?
Aye.
No,
Opposed? All right. Moving on to item B. This is still public hearings. Sitting as a Smithfield Water Supply Board, consider, discuss, and act upon a request for a waiver of water main extension based on the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 350, Water Line Extensions, Article 1, Construction of Water Lines and Other Water Capital Equipment by Private Developers, Section 350-1, Extension of Water Service, Article 1C. I declare this public hearing open.
It's not a vote.
What?
It's not a vote. And I'd ask the council to consider tabling this item until December 5th. We've heard from the developer who's asking that there's additional work that they need to complete and meet with the fire marshal and so forth. So we're asking the town council to consider at this time tabling this until December 5th.
Motion to table.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to item C. Consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing the town manager to enter into a contract with Dant Clayton through the Sourcewell contract 91719-DCT for the purchase of the Boyle Athletic Complex grandstand and press box materials with an option for installation in an amount not to exceed $449,000.00 based on final action by the Boyle Athletic Complex Building Committee and pending final review by the town solicitor.
Thank you, Council President. So this item was before the school committee last night, and it has passed a similar motion as we have tonight. What we're asking the council to do is to agree about us moving forward with the contract with Dan Clayton for either one of the two options of being the 550 seat capacity or the 487 seat capacity of the bleachers, as well as the press box. So this item, we originally went out and solicited for the 550 seat option, but they also provided pricing on the 487 seat option, which would actually allow for less bathrooms to be included within the concession stand building because of the quantity of seats. So the permanent structures of seating require the number of seats and the number of bathroom stalls within the complex. So that option just needs to be discussed further with the building committee on Thursday. So we're just asking at this time for the council to move forward with the motion as stated.
Move passage.
Seconded.
Any discussion?
So you're saying that the 487 seat alternative really isn't feasible if we want to put the restrooms in? Is that what you're saying?
No, the 487 seat capacity would actually allow us to remove one, potentially two stalls in the bathroom, which would reduce the cost of the concession stand, and we could have the additional seating be on the visitor side, which is not the permanent structure seating. So it gives us more flexibility. The permanent structure, once we have 550 seats, we have to comply with the number of bathrooms to be within code. So by having a smaller capacity on the home side, the permanent stand, it allows us the flexibility to reduce the bathroom count in the concession stand. We'd definitely be able to make up plenty of seats on that.
We'd save $60,000.
Well, that's,
Right. So why don't we just approve that alternative too?
I think that's the approach. It's just that the practice had been with action by the building committee as well. So that's why I put forward the motion in the way that I did, because the building committee couldn't meet until Thursday, which is after us. So that's probably 99% the direction the committee is going to go, but we just wanted to give them the flexibility to finalize that.
I think we should just approve alternative two. And then if they change their mind, they can always come back. We're meeting in 2 weeks anyway, so they could come back. Is there any problem with that?
Time-wise, to come back would be a problem because we need to get the stand. It's unbelievable the lead time on stands. That's like the worst thing in the whole project about time-wise.
And I know that there was a problem with the RFPs coming in too high. Did that involve the stands at all, or the press box?
So the stands and press box was alternates within that, and that's why it was decided to go out and go to the manufacturer of the stands in the press box, which has seen the big reduce in the pricing of that. The other part is we're working on is the actual concession bathroom
Right, so this alleviates that?
This alleviates the cost. We still need to fix the problems with the concession building.
Right, I understand.
So at least we're checking boxes and we can get this ordered.
Kenneth Souza, 2 Williams Road. A suggestion, because you know which committee I'm on, when I see motions like this, it never says, or very seldom says, where the money's coming from, okay? I know you're ready to answer that. I just want to, I've seen this a lot of times. What, a year and a half ago, we approved, and it was part of the bonding, these basketball courts and basketball hoops that seem to be so expensive. So my question is, where is this coming from? Where is the status of this complex in terms of, is it putting us over, under? Are we still in budget? I mean, you and I have spoken about this, so I appreciate.
So with the purchase of this, even if we went up to the max, it would be within the approved budget that was done for the project overall. So it's the combination of the town and school funds. The bigger piece, the concession and bathrooms is a piece we need to work out to see where we get to the bottom line and how we're going to fund the difference. Because that would be when we start to go over the budget.
So the 449 is still going to put us underneath that threshold.
Correct.
So the question, I guess, begs, how close are we coming with the 449? And if you don't know, it's
The
okay.
exact number off the top of my head, I don't know.
Okay.
I just know it's below, maybe there's 50,000 in
Okay.
residual, somewhere in there, but
It sounds like the next thing is going to put us over.
correct.
Okay, I mean, I would respectfully suggest to this council and the school committee that that should be in the next, whatever, where to pull the money from, because we need to figure out what pot it's coming from. You understand? On a spreadsheet. No, I know. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to item D. Consider, discuss, and act upon adopting a resolution to place Smithfield Land Trust Recreation and Open Space Properties in a municipal public trust, sponsored by council members Rachel Toppy and Michael Iannotti.
Since the last time we were here, we've taken out a few more properties. We want to make absolutely sure that we're not tying up town properties that we may want to do something different with in the future. These were not large parcels. They were things like the Bouchard Conservation Building and Camp Shepherd. Camp Shepherd is still under consideration as to what the future is going to be for that. There is a separate committee determining what the plan is for Camp Shepherd, so we didn't want to tie that one up right as of yet. So what we have remaining is still a substantial number of properties. All of the land trust properties that were proposed originally, including 23 parcels consisting of 800 acres of land that would be put into the public trust by this resolution. And that would mean that the land was in public trust under the Rhode Island statute in perpetuity, which means that it could never be sold or used for other purposes. Should I read the resolution? And so, Mr. President, I would move passage.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Yes.
Tom Hodgkins, Jordan Fredham Pike. As I said at your last meeting, I think this is a valuable tool that the council should use. But the reason we need this tool is because the last council took the decision away from the voters and changed the state law and gave themselves the power to vote to sell conserved land. And they did that. So now there's a precedent for that. There's also a conflict between the Smithfield ordinance and the state law, because when the council changed the state law, they never made the change to the town ordinance. So there's a conflict there. And the town ordinance does not permit the sale of land by a vote of the council at this point, even though the council did that a couple years ago. But in any event, I think this is another valuable tool the town should use. I'm certainly concerned about the removal of Camp Shepherd from this list. When Camp Shepherd was purchased, the former council and town officials told the public that Camp Shepherd would remain open, preserved space. They told the public that there would be a conservation easement on Camp Shepherd. 3 years have gone by. There's no conservation easement, and there's no protection for that property. So I'm unclear why the council is unwilling to commit to using Camp Shepherd in the way that it said it would when it voted to purchase the property back in 2020. Thank you.
Thank you.
In response to that, Camp Shepherd was taken out until we have an opportunity for the Camp Shepherd Committee to report. We can, in the future, put any properties that the council will vote to put in to the public trust. And I intend to revisit the Camp Shepherd issue once the subcommittee reports on the appropriate use.
Yeah.
Camp Shepherd is in an open space zone. It can only be used for that purpose.
And thank you. I appreciate your advocacy on that. As I brought up when this council was recently sat, the scope of what the subcommittee can discuss is limited by the decision of the Rhode Island Ethics Commission. This Camp Shepherd subcommittee cannot discuss uses for that property that are not consistent with open space. So I hope the council will consider whether that subcommittee is, or what the scope of that subcommittee is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert Leach to speak personally about this. I haven't brought this to our commission, so I can't speak for the full commission, but I can give you my personal assessment as a preservation architect and planner, that my understanding as a citizen, when we bought Camp Shepherd, it was going to be for open space, but there was going to be a true study in architectural and planning terms that's pretty detailed. It has environmental, it has all the things. And I think Randy's really worked hard on this. I know it seems like snap of a finger and 3.5 years go by. So I would say be a little more patient on Camp Shepherd. When I was asked to look at that for several influential community members, I found that there are no residual lots that could be carved out and sold on a day's notice because they don't exist. There would have to be a major subdivision done, and you can imagine what the taxpayers might say about that. It's a very difficult site. So I would say let's not get over our skis too much on Camp Shepherd. It needs to be protected. We have insisted that 4 of the 5 historic buildings that were there would be protected, and that we would be very adamant in defending the preservation of those historic structures from the early 1930s. But otherwise, I would say this, it's really, of course, up to you as usual. But I'm not as concerned with Camp Shepherd as I am of other properties. I had to go down to the State House, what was it, 4 years ago, when there was actually representative of this town trying to take away some of the rights of these property owners who donated properties or sold them for pennies on the dollar, to protect their rights in giving those and to be held in public trust. So I was there at the Capitol in Providence to give testimony that we shouldn't go backwards on some of these things. If in fact something is given, not purchased, it's an operative word on Camp Shepherd, then that puts it in a class by itself. But I do think you should ratify this, and personally, not speaking for the commission again, to consider this and pass this. We'll deal with Camp Shepherd. That's a big undertaking, and I know that, as I mentioned, Randy and others have spent a lot of time on that. We'll get that right. I feel pretty confident about it. Thank you very much for letting me express my opinion.
So being on the Camp Shepherd subcommittee, I personally have every intention on keeping it protected as open space. And I would assume it seems like that's the general consensus, Randy, yeah. So there's just more work to be done on that committee, that's all, but we don't plan on developing that at all. I would never vote for that, so.
And this council created open space zones for this town. We didn't have them before. We created them a few months ago.
And the property sits in an open space zone, which prohibits residential development.
One quick suggestion I have is just purely cosmetic, just in terms of uniformity with the resolutions that we pass through this chamber. I've never seen a resolution made in Comic Sans. Can we make that like Times Roman, like everything else? The final version is great.
I have a question. How many other towns have this?
Narragansett.
Just, that's the only one?
So far, this was a statute that is relatively new. 2 years old? 2021.
And only one town has it? We would be
So
the
far,
second.
we'd be the second town. I'd also note that a copy of the resolution should be recorded by the town clerk in the land evidence records for each parcel.
I just have to ask myself, if this passed in 2021, how come more towns didn't jump on board here?
They're not as enlightened as we are in Smithfield.
Oh, that's a very good answer. Very good answer.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to new business. Consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing a bid award for drainage, maintenance, loam and seed, and tree plantings within the Deer Run Estate subdivision.
Good evening, council. Thank you again. Kevin Cleary, town engineer. So the subject scope of services was advertised in a request for proposals and collected bids on September 21st. After review of the bids, the apparent low bid was relatively in line with what we expected the costs to be, and the second bid came in anomalously high. As such, the recommendation for the town council's consideration tonight is to move passage of certain items within the bid, bid items 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8 in the amount of $65,995, and then authorize the installation of up to 38 tree plantings within item 7 for a cost of $31,191.92 for a total contract amount of $97,186.92. And that should finish out the balance of both the required finished work items that are needed in the subdivision and what I would consider the aesthetic items in the subdivision that unfortunately we did have to make some cuts on due to other unforeseen circumstances that occurred after the town collected bond from the original developer, and construction activities that occurred during the course of time after the bond was posted. Things got damaged, drainage equipment got broken, had to be repaired, and that caused some cost overruns that weren't captured in the original bond because those items hadn't occurred, and they couldn't have been perceived that they would have ever occurred. So there were some to the tune of about $60,000 worth of drainage repairs that were needed that weren't anticipated. It would have been better seen to be able to complete all the tree plantings in the subdivision, but as such, we may not be able to do all of them.
Okay.
Kevin, can you remind us what the original number was of trees? Was it 90?
96, Councilor
96?
Toppy, yes. So this is a pretty significant reduction. And I think what could be done, I provided the information to try to provide some specifics, but the motion's left a little bit open-ended, so that perhaps maybe we could make some concessions with the contractor at the time of tree selection. Maybe try to find a tree that might be a little bit less expensive, so that the unit price can come down a little bit, and maybe we can seek a few more trees out of it, and to try to make sure that everybody gets a tree across the front of their property, or several trees, and share the wealth, if you will, or at least allocate all the bond monies that were originally posted appropriately.
So a couple questions. How many houses are there? I know there's not a ton. What is it, like 20?
20.
Oh, there's 20, okay. All right, so like 2 per house, pretty much. So it's being equally distributed.
Fairly, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, almost. 2 people.
Move
Yeah,
passage.
Any discussion? Thank you, Kevin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to item B, consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing the town manager to execute a construction and maintenance agreement with the state of Rhode Island for a pavement improvements project on Route 7 Douglas and Douglas Pike.
Thank you very much, Town Council and Council President. In preparation of Rhode Island DOT doing surface pavement restoration and a complete surface overlay of Douglas Pike from Providence all the way up through Burgerville, part of the work which is occurring in Smithfield, they requested utility review throughout the corridor in Smithfield. As such, the Sewer Authority brought to their attention a number of fixtures that should be replaced along certain sections of Douglas Pike. As such, they typically enter construction and maintenance agreements with communities to facilitate that work, labor of which will be at their cost of the purchase of the materials will be at ours. Pretty fair assessment, and as such, the state has drafted up a construction and maintenance agreement. I've reviewed it. The town solicitors also reviewed it. We've gone through a couple of revisions with the state and negotiated what I feel is a fair offer. If there's any questions on the actual language within the C&M agreement, I'd be glad to, do my best to try to interpret them and answer them.
Are there town funds involved in this or no?
There will be some
There will be.
town sewer authority funds
Sewer
to
authority.
purchase castings for sewer structures that we've requested certain replacements of, but that'll come directly out of the sewer fund as a repair item.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
There would also be maintenance responsibilities like for sidewalks.
Fortunately, there are no sidewalks on Douglas Pike, so
Right.
I think that's kind of boilerplate language that they typically include on all their C&M agreements these days. State law enabled that about 8 years ago. They switched the onus from state to towns.
Any strings attached?
No, not, I tried to weed out all the strings.
Okay.
And Randy saw some of the cuts on the language we had go back and forth, so I did weed out as many strings as I possibly could. And I feel that they've put their best foot forward to offer a fair agreement.
Move passage.
Seconded.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you,
Thank
Council.
you very much.
Have a good night.
You too. Item C, consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing a request for proposals for a two-year on-call townwide electrical service contract.
Thank you, Council President, council members. This item comes up every 2 years. We make sure that we have electrical contractor on service for both us and the school department. This has been very successful, and the rates that we've received has definitely helped over the years accomplish a lot of the projects we need to get done. So this will be just to authorize the advertisement of the RFP, and when those are received, we'll bring them back before the council for consideration.
Move passage.
Seconded.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Item D, consider, discuss, and act upon adopting a resolution authorizing the submission of our RIDEM Recreational Acquisition and Development Grant for the acquisition of Plat 23, Lot 67A, this is 0 Cross Street, to provide parking for Whipple Field and Olivia's Forest Trail.
Good evening, Council. Mike Phillips, Town Planner. Before you, you have a memo from me and a package detailing the property that we're looking at going after. This is an acquisition grant that comes up every couple of years with DEM to buy open space. And in this particular case, we're looking at buying this property to provide parking for Whipple Field, which is badly needed, and also to provide trailhead parking for the Olivia's Forest Trail. We've had an appraisal about a year ago that brought the price in about $235,000. So we'd like to put, it's a 50-50 match grant program. So we'd be on the hook for $117,500. It's 50% of the match for the acquisition cost. This acquisition we've been working on for, I don't know, Randy, it's probably since 2018 or even before that with Mr. Conti. And we do have another proposal before the Land Trust to try and get it for a cheaper price with some reconfiguration of lots in that area, and it involves the Land Trust. I believe they're taking it up at their next meeting to discuss that. But we're putting in for the full amount as if the lot as is through the DEM grant project. So we would request that you recommend the town manager to submit the application, which is due middle of October.
Thank you. Do you know how many spots they're gonna try, the parking spots? Because parking's an issue over there, so.
Yeah, we've laid out a lot, probably 30 spots, and I know I met out there with Gene to look at it. He thinks we can get some more down on the apron right along the road, just on the property, but 30 in a formal parking lot at least. So
Isn't a substantial amount of this property wet?
yeah, there's a stream that comes down through it and goes through Whipple Field.
So we have an appraisal attached. Is that where the price came from the
Yes.
appraisal?
Yep.
And do you think the amount was correct, given the fact that the lot is so wet? There's a stream that goes through it? And it says in the appraisal that a lot of it isn't, something to the effect that wetlands are noted. It does appear to be a building envelope per engineering, but
Yeah,
I'm wondering.
you could
how
actually
this
get
was
two.
valued.
You could get two houses out of this if you had
Two
easements to it.
houses,
Yeah.
right. And who got the appraisal for this?
We had appraisals done earlier, back in 2018 and 2021, but the owner did this appraisal, the most recent one.
So this appraisal was done last November.
Yep.
Would DEM accept that as a value, or are they going to require something more recent?
No, within a year is pretty standard. I talked to the assessor about it, and he felt that within a year, things hadn't changed that much for raw land like this. So he was comfortable with the date of it.
Now, once you apply for a grant, is the price locked in for the property?
Well, if they grant you that amount and the amount changed, they're not going to change the grant amount. You're going to have to come up with the rest. The town would have to come up with the rest if the price went up.
Right. I mean, has the seller agreed to this amount?
That's the million-dollar question.
No, it's $235,000.
He agreed to sell it to us for less than the appraised value with some adjustments to the lot lines. So, and that's what the land trust is going to be taking up.
Right, so he hasn't agreed to this price yet.
Well, he in principle, yeah, he agreed that we would, but he wanted to do this reconfiguration. So that's what the land trust is going to be taking up. And we wanted to put in the grant for the full amount of the appraised value for the grant. So if it works out with the land trust and we can reconfigure the lots and we can get it for cheaper, then we won't need to spend all the grant money.
Are you confident that this is an appropriate number? Since you said that we had it appraised earlier by our own appraisers?
We had an appraisal done back in 2018 before the prices went through the roof. So it was
much lower.
Yeah, it was much lower. Yeah, prices have gone way up since then.
Do you think another appraisal would be appropriate?
As, you know, I asked the assessor about it, and he didn't feel it would be necessary. He looked at this appraisal and said it was reasonable, the comps that they did and everything, so he felt confident with it.
And where's the money coming from to pay for the, our part of the?
So our part of it was already budgeted as part of the APRA, I always say it the wrong way. The federal funds, money has been put aside for this parking lot, for, you know, as part of that budget process. Additionally, too, I think this is the cap. That 235 is the cap. To further reiterate that, you know, since we've been dealing with this, actually, I think this goes back even, you know, over 10 years at least, that there's been conversations about this lot. And I think we're getting to the finish line, and the amount, you know, is definitely the most. And I know we can definitely get it for less, but we do need to ask for the full amount from DM just to be on the safe side.
I mean, we're sure that there's enough buildable room for 30 parking spaces?
Yes.
Yeah. No, it just seems like a lot of money for parking spaces, because then we have to also build the parking spaces.
Correct.
Do we do that, or does?
Yes, and we've put the funds aside to accomplish that as well.
Right, so we contract that out?
No, we do it internally.
If you go by there on a weekend during softball and baseball, they're on the street, there's kids running everywhere, so
yeah,
it's
I'm
a
not-
good option.
I'm not disputing the need for it at all.
Mike, just, it says the town of Smithfield will provide half the money, which is $117,000, and then in-kind services for the acquisition. So what does that include, and is there a limit to that? I mean, that could mean anything.
They allow some in-kind stuff. If we were going to be doing if we were doing appraisal and other stuff, you know, that would be our in-kind costs, contributing to the appraisal costs and other things. Survey, if there's other stuff. You know, the in-kind really doesn't play into an acquisition like this. If it was a development grant round where we were building
Okay.
something, we would, you know, the in-kind services to build a parking lot would count.
Okay, it just seems pretty vague. They could just say you have to pay for this, you know? So I know it's a parking lot, but what do I know? I'm not a developer, so.
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Moving on to public comment. If anyone in the public would like to get up and speak, just leave your name and say your name and address. That'd be great. Hello.
Hi, my name's Misty. It's first time here. I've been living in Smithfield for 8 years. I just bought a house a couple years ago during COVID, so that was fun. But because it was during COVID, I didn't get to do the usual come at different hours, stay in the neighborhood, check things out. Had I done that, I might not have purchased my house. I am on Whipple Road, and I am between Douglas Pike and Whipple Field. And let me tell you, the cars on that road, I will not send my son to my mailbox for fear of getting hit. I noticed recently you have somebody put up the, I don't know what you call it, but it records your speed. So that's been a few weeks. I don't know if it's doing anything, but people drive like it's a highway.
Did you say Willow or Whipple?
Whipple.
Okay, yep.
A dog got hit by a car last week. I didn't witness it, but I saw the dog later. Luckily, she's okay. She's back home. But I don't know what to do. So this is my first step in trying to get involved. There's got to be something. I mean, it's scary. So I don't know my next step, if you know what my next step would be.
No problem. So the next step is to actually, we'd suggest providing all that information on the form. There's on the police department's website, there's a traffic safety commission form. What that will do is they'll take the data down, and it sounds like they're collecting the data already. Based on having that out there, it doesn't just tell the speed, it also tracks. So we get the counts and the number of people that go over that speed limit. But they can do additional studies by putting that in. They'll bring it before the Traffic Safety Commission, and they'll complete a traffic study on the road. And they've done some studies in the past. And when there was actually other construction going on, there was the stop sign that was actually at Ridge. And that seemed to cull it. I mean, of course, you always have the people blowing stop signs, and
Right.
we have to go after them too.
Right.
But every little step, so I would definitely suggest completing that. I'm taking this down as well, and I'm going to inform the chief in the morning as well. So
Right.
each piece, we're in this together, and we'll try to make it better.
Okay, and it doesn't help too that I'm right, so as you're coming up from the field, you know how it goes up a hill and then around a corner? My house is right after the corner, so I don't know if people are speeding to get up the hill or if they're flying because they're going down, but I'm getting it from both directions.
And the worst thing is too that we paved it, so that doesn't help either.
And then a couple weeks ago, I got up in the morning to take my son to school and my mailbox was smashed to smithereens in my lawn. So I don't know if that's a combination of people not paying attention or I have it fixed finally, but, so anyway, what was the name of the form?
It's a Traffic Safety Commission.
We actually have
Thank
a
you.
traffic safety meeting on October 19th at 2 PM at the police station.
Great, I'll be there, thank you.
Anyone else like to speak?
Randy, how many times have I promised you I would bring you apples for staff? This is 42 pounds. If it's individual, it doesn't exceed the $25 limit. Thank you for all your help personally, because you have helped me a lot. So I'm making good on that promise. I've got some plastic bags. There's enough here for everybody here to take a few, and I will replenish this at your request.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Anyone else like to speak?
Hello, can you hear me okay? My name is Kim Zillmer. I live at 334 Waterman Ave in Smithfield. I'm here to speak about my experience publicly with the Smithfield Police Department around my son Waylon Ziggelmeier's death from a fentanyl overdose on October 28th, 2021. You can see, I have his shirt, here's his picture. My experience with the police is summarized in my letter to the editor that was entitled "Smithfield Police Are Missing the Point," that was published in the Valley Breeze on September 16th. I have copies, which I will give to whoever the appropriate person is, and ask that my letter be made part of the public record. All council members, as well as all the two state reps and Senator Tokoyan, also received that letter as part of a follow-up email that I sent to all of you and them. I have not heard from anybody, save one person, one town council member. So I just want that to be on the record. I did hear from Randy Rossi, which I'm assuming he's answering for the town council. So I would like to thank the town council for the response from Randy Rossi. So, in brief, when Waylon passed away, the police came to the house and the detective gave me his card, and I never heard from the police again. And that, I felt confused about that. So in January of 2022, I went and I talked to Detective Cersei, who was the detective involved. And in the 35 minutes that I spoke to him, I asked repeatedly why the police hadn't just at least come back and tried to find some more information. And I will be really upfront, like, I never expected there to be an arrest, a conviction, somebody going to prison. That is so not what this is about, because I understand how complicated and difficult that piece is, and differing philosophies in police departments now, things are changing, etc. Right? But if you lost your child or a loved one, niece, nephew, mother, father, and the police never came back, how would you feel? So Detective Cersei never, he said it was a big problem in town. And that made me feel even more confused, because it's like, if it's a big problem and it's this really dangerous thing, you don't seem to want any information when somebody dies from it. So that was even more confusing. And Cersei never offered as an explanation that classifying these overdose deaths, perhaps as an adult versus children, I think it might be different, I'm not sure. But he never said, well, look, that's our policy. We're doing this harm reduction thing, and we're not focusing on, there was none of that. There was none of that. There was, well, if we don't think we can get a conviction, then we don't do anything. But it's like, how do you know you can't get a conviction if you don't even ask any questions? And again, it wasn't about an arrest. It's like, just wouldn't you want to know, just get information about how this drug might be coming into the community, something, anything, if it's such a big problem in the community. It's just so confusing. So again, I understand the issue's complicated. I understand these differing philosophies. I understand the police are probably moving to more of a harm reduction thing. So there may be legitimate reasons why the police approach the opioid crisis in this community the way they do and handle overdose deaths the way that they do. But to just leave a parent hanging and not give them any kind of heads up that, hey, this is how we do it. So you're not going to be hearing back from us. We're classifying it as no crime involved. This is the philosophy of the police department. This is how we handle it. To just be left hanging comes across as really cold and uncaring, and really, honestly, feels really disrespectful to the life and death of my child. At least let me know. So I spoke to Lori McDougall today. She's the co-chair of the Family Task Force, which is part of the Governor's Overdose Prevention and Intervention Task Force, which was convened in 2017 by Governor Raimondo. So my discussion with her helped me understand that, yeah, really kind of this is the way that it goes, Kim. This is how the police handle it. Okay, so that's how they handle it. It needs to be more transparent to the community if this is the approach that's being taken by the police, because it's very confusing. It feels like the police could care less when your child dies. It doesn't help police community relations. It doesn't build trust. It really leaves a bad taste in the mouth with no explanation. Right now I have a deeper understanding. Okay, so what I'm asking is that the police have their priorities on their website, which that's kind of another thing. There is a little thing about fentanyl and opioids, but not much. So I'm asking that, parents and other loved ones deserve to be informed by the police that this is going to be their approach, that it's not a crime. They're classifying it as not a crime. They're not going to investigate. If you have information, you can come tell us, but I didn't even get that. If you come across information, could you please let us know? There was nothing. So people in that position deserve to know that. It's upfront from the police. So I would ask that the town council, however they do that, like if they can talk to the police or whatever, I think that would be helpful. I think that the police should be more transparent with the community. This is a big problem. And they should be clear about, hey, we're operating from this harm reduction place if that is indeed the case, or this is how we handle the crisis in town. And at least for the families, that they get more information, like this is what you can expect or not expect from the police in these instances. So that's what I'm here to say, that please can you all, I will speak with the police, but at a minimum, let families know. I don't think it's really asking too much if there's just a little fact sheet that can be handed out or sent out to the families that says this is how we're going to handle it or whatever. here are some resources that you may want to look into, the task force is one, whatever, like that can be put together. The task force is willing to work on just a fact sheet that can be given to people in that situation when they've lost a loved one to overdose. So, how we're going to handle it. Here are some resources. Just something, because nothing feels very hurtful and very, very disrespectful. And I think it would feel that way to anyone that was in that situation. So, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I look forward to working with you if that's how it works out.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm James Robshaw, Walter Carey Road. I stand tonight, I have to read this. Sorry. I stand tonight in support of the statement made by Ms. Ziegelmeyer. I can corroborate her experience about the same town agency with my own. 3 months prior to Whalen's death, my son Giovanni Patella Robshaw died from an overdose death. A field test showed fentanyl. Arriving upon the scene, I was astonished how many law enforcement, emergency medical, and fire resources were present. Hazmat was called, and decontamination took a long time. Eventually, the medical examiner arrived, took away the body in a bag, and that's the last I ever saw of him. I spoke to 2 or 3 officers, identified myself as next of kin, his father. Neither one told me next steps, but I knew on my own to contact the funeral home, and I think the funeral home took it from there. I can't remember. After a couple weeks, having arranged not only Giovanni's funeral, but my husband's as well, same week, I contacted the head of the Smithfield agency. I had not heard from them, but thought in the days after the horrible event that I might have. I thought they were looking into it as if it were a case. I asked for and received a response from the chief. At the time, I really thought that the department was investigating how it is that a 20-year-old got access to such a deadly substance, where it came from. The status of the incident report says no crime involved. So that's it. To the authorities, this is case closed. A little history, when Giovanni was 12, the department, that same department, opened a case and arrested him, 12 years old. Arrested him on the word of 2 witnesses. There followed a year involving a lawyer, school, protocols, etc. I asked for, but was denied a call with the juvenile detective. Our lawyer was also denied a call, which seemed very unusual to him, given his background in law and as a former police prosecutor himself. The weight and resources of the department were available against a 12-year-old, and eventually the case went to court and was dismissed. One witness later told Giovanni that they were sorry to put him through it, but the parents made them go through the department, which resulted in his arrest. When he was 12, the department had the resources to pursue a false claim, but when he died, age 20, the department had no interest. I am aware of my son's culpability in his own demise. Nevertheless, for the rest of my life, I will be haunted with questions and what ifs no one can answer. My heart breaks for other parents and loved ones left behind in similar circumstances. According to CDC reported by NPR, overdose deaths in 2020 were at 91,799. In 2021, when Giovanni and Whalen died, there were 106,699. It rose again in 2022 to 110,236. Smithfield accounts for some of these. I don't have a number, but I suspect it is substantial from the detective Cersei's response to Ms. Ziegelmeyer. I don't have expectations of this council to answer my concerns. I'm not even certain if the town council or any other entity has authority or oversight. I was disappointed when Ms. Ziegelmeyer shared with me the response from town council suggesting a meeting between the parents, the town manager, and representatives from the department. I don't really see the point, but maybe it can be explained to us by a council person. In my experience, there was a disconnect between what I expected and what really happened. Perhaps town council can oversee the efficacy of department resources and priorities. Also, perhaps a better practice might be found to contact and follow up with next of kin. I appreciate and can only imagine how difficult it is for our first responders to deal with such human calamity, especially involving the young. But next of kin are seeking answers and closure. They need to know what the next steps are or are not. They shouldn't have to wait to find out that that's not how it works. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. President, may I say a couple of things? First of all, my condolences to both of you. I am the president and CEO of the Substance Use Mental Health Leadership Council, and I know Lori very well. And I sit on the Governor's Overdose Task Force. There's a stigma throughout the state attached to what happened to your kids. And I'm the one that said to Randy, you should probably meet with the parents and get more information so we can address the police with this issue. And I agree with you 110%. There should be someone that comes to your house, whoever that may be. And by the way, we were one of the last communities in the state to carry Narcan because our leadership didn't want to carry it. And we had a police officer go down on an overdose. Imagine if we didn't carry Narcan. He would have been dead. So there's a lack of leadership in my mind that deals with substance use and mental health within the police department. And I've spoken to Randy about this many times. And the stigma that goes along with it. Whether we have someone who's 12 years old that dies of an overdose, or we had someone a few weeks ago at 84 die of an overdose. I'm tired of going to funerals of kids and wakes because nothing's being done at the top to make its way down to the level that we are today. But we have a chance. We have a chance to make a difference. And I implore Randy to do something with some sort of committee. If we have a debt, go to these people's houses and tell them what they need to do. Follow some sort of protocol. It's not right. It's not right. At 435 last year, deaths of an overdose. 435 in Rhode Island. We're waiting for the count in Smithfield. Randy's doing that right now for us. Councilwoman Toppy asked for that at the last meeting. But it's Smithfield, for many, many years, have been like ostriches with their heads in the sand because they don't think we have a problem here. We have a damn big problem here. We just had a huge drug bust yesterday up at the Alpine Motel. Huge. We are the center of deliveries that's happening on 44 and Route 7. Something has got to be done. We need some sort of task force. And we talked about a DEA agent coming in to help the town because we have so many overdoses and so much drugs here. But people don't want to look at it and say, yes, we do have a problem. No, we don't have a problem because we're in Smithfield. That's baloney. We have a big problem. And until we get the proper people in place, whether it be the top of the police or the bottom of the police, we have to do something. Enough is enough. And I believe me, I'm with you. All my heart, when you lose somebody, I see it every day. Every day.
I was just going to add to what you were saying.
Excuse me, just public comment. Yeah, I just got here. I'm late. I wanted to come here for the the wall. I understand that. I'm here under public comment. Please?
You need to state your name and address.
Yes, my name's Al Costantino, 16 Totem Pole Trail. I'm a taxpayer. I missed the meeting. but I want to state myself. I have that right. So, I just want to pass these out because briefly, 60 years ago, there'd be ads in the Observer about people selling fieldstone. The fieldstone that was sold came off walls, fieldstone walls. And someone goes to repair a fieldstone wall, they have to get fieldstone that came off another wall. So it's like checkers over here, what happens to walls. If you want to go downstairs in the records, you're going to see property lines of fieldstone walls. They're actually a property line of property. So the question is, if you've got a wall that's earmarked as historic, it's a property line, who's paying the fine? Both parties? How about if both parties are the Hatfield McCoys, they don't talk to one another? All right? So who's going to pay this fine? Who's responsible for the deterioration of the wall? What about if you buy a piece of property and the walls have already been, let's call them stripped, or let's just call them they've been compromised because people took stones off them. And I can take you throughout town and show you tens and tens and tens, and maybe hundreds of walls that you could consider to be illegal. So someone buys a piece of property, and now the new owner is responsible for this wall. So there's no definition of here historic wall, historic stone wall. And that's the whole key to what's driving this as far as being legal or illegal. Someone's determined whether it's a historic stone wall. And then I just want to, you say what you mean what you say. It says here, any person violating any provision of this chapter shall be subject to a fine of $500. Each day, any violation of this chapter shall constitute a separate offense. So every 24 hours, you're going to cite a separate offense because it was cited the day before. So what you really mean to say here is that there'll be a $500 daily fine. Simple as that. Because when two reasonably prudent people can have a different meaning to a sentence, the interpreter prevails over the drafter. And that's in law. So this is ambiguous. The second thing is, it says here that shall not require, but shall require review by the Smithfield Historic Preservation Commission chairman or its designee. I'm not going to call that an ad hoc committee. It's not a committee that has a commission that has an attorney, they have representation, they have anything binding. But then it further says the building official shall provide a written notice to any landowner found to be in violation. So now we're getting into zoning. So now this is going to be a zoning issue of a zoning citation. And then you go on to say, the notice of violation shall detail the nature of the violation, fines to be levied, and provide a time frame for taking remedial action. No additional building permits for the subject property shall be issued until a plan for rebuilding a stone wall has been submitted and approved by the Smithfield Historic Commission. You start out with this sentence or paragraph saying it's a zoning issue with the building official, and now you're saying further down that it's going to be the Smithfield Historic Preservation Commission that's going to call the shots on the plan being approved. I never heard such a thing in my life. When you go to zoning and you've got a plan, the plan goes to zoning, it doesn't go to another committee. In other words, it doesn't make sense. The building official shall provide a notice, so now it's in the zoning, the building official's hands, and then in the end it says, but the remediation permits shall be issued by plans for rebuilding stone walls been submitted and approved by the Smithfield Historic Commission. That doesn't make sense. It should be the building official. And also, the building official shall require remediation plan of repair or restoration of the stone wall. Any plan to repair, restore, and affect the stone wall must be approved by the Smithfield Historic Commission. So here you are, you got a zoning issue, and you're asking the Historic Commission to approve it. I just want to tell you that I know you proved it tonight, something that got done to be undone. And I believe that this thing is a legal nightmare. And I may have to prove that. And I have no problem doing it. And I've proven myself that I love stone. I've done a lot in Smithfield with stone. I've had themes of stone and granite. I'm doing the same thing up in Gloucester. And I can just drive down the road. You know where those photos came from, right? The dog park. So what you're seeing at this dog park that's owned by the town, you're seeing a wall that was an historic wall. You'll see the fern down the road, and then somehow it got stripped. It could have been years ago, it could have been while they were in construction, but it wasn't all, a lot of it was years ago. So look what was the remediation there. You're talking a $500 fine, which is $3,500 a week, which is $14,000 a month, every 30 days. I'm going to find out. I'll have to go to the building official's office. You go to the fire department. Anywhere in this town where you've got a $500 fine for something like ADA compliance, safety, public safety, code issues with stairways in public buildings, they don't have a $500 fine. Now you've got a piece of stone on the ground, and all of a sudden now that's a $500 a day fine. And you're saying you can't get a building permit until you get a remediation plan? So if somebody has left a 100-acre farm that their grandfather worked himself from the ground to pass it on, it's left to a family that really doesn't have a lot of money, and they want to build a house on it, they can't do a darn thing until they deal with this wall. This is a communist document. And I'd like to know what entity in the town came up with this. In other words, this thing's getting into zoning, but it bounces back into the Historic Commission. So you tell me where this came from. I can't believe this went before the zoning board. When there was changes to the zoning ordinance, the zoning board wanted to review it. This is a communist document. It's a communist document, and you ought to think about rescinding it. You can do it at the next meeting. And a picture's worth 1,000 words. Go by the dog. And by the way, the dog park came out nice. It did. I have to say that. But this is a joke about what you're doing to homeowners and people, about $500 a day fine. Find yourself. Another thing, how much land do you think the property owner is responsible for this? How much stones do you know have been stripped that are owned by DOT, the Department of Transportation, up and down Farnham Pike, Route 7, 116? There's walls. Are you going to find the state? Where's your priorities? Where in God's creation is your priorities when in 25 years we still don't have a fire station up in 7 and 116? It was supposed to have been done 25 years ago. It's still not there. But this thing is put together like, the town's gonna fall apart if we don't do this. You want to look at a real good zoning, stone wall ordinance? Go look at the town of Lincoln. They have a good one. And you know what it says? It's not about fines. It's about giving people tax credits if they protect their stone walls. It's right in there in black and white. And they also say, if it's deemed that it's historic and you get a tax credit, and if you don't maintain it, they take the tax credit away. There's nothing in there about fines. Nothing at all. I just don't get it. You go anywhere in the town, where is there a $500 fine for something about a stone being on the ground? You got a stone on the ground, you're gonna fine you $500 because it should have been 6 feet away. There's hardworking people in this town that have walls that have been deteriorated. I drive by them on the way to work every morning. What are you going to do, torture those people? All of a sudden now, they've got to spend tens of thousands of dollars. And don't think it's not tens of thousands of dollars. Right now, a mason's $500 a day. And if you think you can't get a building permit to build a house, you bought a piece of property, it's got stone walls on it that deteriorated. You want to build a house to live in, and you can't do anything until you get the stone wall straightened out. And maybe you don't have the money for the stone wall, you just got enough to build a house. It just doesn't make any sense. And I just don't understand where this came from and the priorities. I don't know what was said before tonight, but it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And then you talk about the plan's got to be approved by the Historic Commission? Really? The Historic Commission is going to approve a plan for the footing for the stone wall? And any stone wall, they have to be built from the bottom up. So when you're going to deal with the stone wall, you're going to pull it all apart to rebuild it. I can't get over it. And I'll say one more thing, and I'm going to walk out of here. So it'll be a cold day in hell before Robert Weeks comes on my property. Cold day in hell. And I'm going to tell you why. I brought it up before. I brought up at meetings several years ago because I reviewed the file of the Waterman Tavern. And I might have to bring it, and I've got a copy of it. Everything's in that file in that Waterman Tavern. And now this person's got the power to come on the property and determine someone's fate. You need to review the Waterman Tavern file. The violations are just one after the other. And where the money and how the money got approved for payment. It's in black and white. If I'm going to get fined in this town, it better be by a public official. And I can deal with that. But not the way you've got this. This thing's a nightmare. It's a legal mess. So what are you going to do when Hatfield and McCoys don't talk to one another, and there's a stone wall and it's the property line, and you're gonna find, and then who's gonna come up with the plan to rebuild it when they don't even talk to one another? It's just not gonna get done. It's just not gonna get done. So you guys didn't want to spend the money to rebuild this wall, right? It's clear. This is a joke. It's absolutely a joke. You passed tonight these pictures of town property, and the dog park came out nice. But this is a prime example that you're way off base in what you're doing. And I don't know where your priorities are. I don't know where they are at all. Because I went to court because of an ADA parking space is 100 feet from a building. And you're going to push a wheelchair up through snow and ice to get to the building. And I went to court, federal court for it. Because that's where my priorities are. And this is a flat out joke. And you need to just look at that. This is unenforceable. You're making a mockery out of this. You need to revisit this. You can do it at the next meeting. Go look at the one in Lincoln, something to be proud of. How this came to be fruition is beyond me. Of people that are municipal people, I just can't believe anybody that's part of the municipality here had anything to do with this. I don't know what you're trying to prove.
Anyone more public comment? Yep. Yes, please.
Town clerk?
Stop it, Al. Thank you.
I was gonna say, I don't want to protract the meeting any further tonight, but there's so many misunderstandings of how the code works. Stone walls that are on the ground now, you're not asking people to rebuild them. This is for people that are violating the code by knocking them down. I know everybody knows it, so if anybody has some more questions to illuminate the hyperbole that just happened, be more than happy on a case-by-case note to let you know why this was a good ordinance and how it will protect you and your neighbor. Boundary walls can't be taken down by either party. If they are damaged, no one is enforcing anybody to rebuild them. So I'll just leave it at that. Everybody kind of knows, I think, what the ordinance says.
Motion? Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
I was gonna say anything, Ed DeMille, 75 Whipple. Terminology is so important. It's going forward. It's going forward. There wasn't anything said in there that said you can't build it that already destroyed from 50 years ago. What Mr. Leach is saying, if you destroy a wall, that's different. If someone wants to build on a house, on a farm, they're not, I don't believe what I heard, that they're required to fix that wall. I don't know where this gentleman come up with that. Anyway, maybe I misunderstood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.